what's good? Boxing Narrative back. Like, comment, subscribe. Fair enough. So, Sebastian Fundora stops Keith Thurman, and I would say the best he's looked since. Well, just in general, this is probably the best Fundora has ever looked in a fight, I would say. Um, I think he did really good. I thought he did really good. Obviously, I said Fundora was going to win, but I thought Fundora was gonna have troubles. I guess that's me being a bit emotional, probably pick on my pick because I was really, I don't know, I don't know. I put my hands up in the air. I got that wrong. I shouldn't have put my faith on Keith Thurman. I mean, I obviously we all knew he was old, inactive, and all that, but I don't know. I guess I was just looking past it and just looking at. I was focusing too much on Fundora's flaws and not really focusing on the main flaws of Keith Thurman. But yeah, Keith or Fundora. This is the best performance I think Fundora's had in his whole career. I thought he looked pretty good. The way he was catching Thurman in between his punches, I liked it a lot. His shots were really hard. Busted up Thurman very fast. Yeah, I think it's a really good performance by Fundora. Was the stoppage a little iffy? I would agree. The stoppage was iffy, like cause Keith Thurman he was circling around the ring, and like Thomas Taylor just comes in and just weighs off the fight. It was a pretty dumb stoppage, but I'm not gonna complain that much because Keith Thurman wasn't Keith Thurman. His game plan was the waiting game. He wanted to have Fundora in like round 8, 9, but he wasn't throwing anything. He was just circling around the ring, backpedaling, being up against the ropes, not really throwing anything good or anything. So even though I agree, like the stoppage at that point in time was a little meh. I'm not gonna complain about it because Thurman wasn't doing anything. Thurman was pretty much just like asking for it. He was asking for it. He wasn't showing what he really could have done. I thought I thought Thurman did, or yeah, I didn't think Thurman did good in this fight at all. And again, I should have known, but it is what it is. I think Thurman, if he wants to come back, Thurman should not be fighting any of these young guys, and that goes for all the other nostalgic fighters. Earl Spence, Jermell Charlo, all these guys should not be fighting these young guys. They should just be fighting each other at this point because I mean, here's the thing. These guys were so selfish because these guys, Keith Thurman, Earl Spence, Charlo, they didn't want to pass the torch. They wanted to sit out, collect millions of tens of dollars, and not pass the torch to these young fighters. Jamal Charlo didn't want to fight Tim Tszyu. Earl Spence didn't want to come back and give someone else the rub. Fundora at least gave Fundora the rub here. But here's the thing. If these guys fight these young fighters now, no one's gonna care because these guys have been so inactive that no one cares anymore. Like their name value is dropped. If you go back in time, what Miguel Cotto, um, even Manny Pacquiao, um, who else? Like any of these guys, Oscar De La Hoya, these guys they lost. They were able to at least lose to these young fighters, and they grew their profile. But these guys, Keith Thurman, Earl Spence, I already named them. These guys, they were so selfish. They just sat out, didn't come back, and they didn't want to fight any of the young fighters. And again, if they do come back and do fight these young fighters, no one's gonna care because their name value doesn't matter anymore. And because their name value doesn't matter anymore, when these young fighters do beat them, like only a couple of people are gonna be like, "Oh my god, let's go." It's not really gonna be such a big deal or anything. That's why when people say like, how do you make stars? You can make stars by beating up on the old guard. But when the old guard matters, when Oscar De La Hoya beat Julio Cesar Chavez, Chavez at that point had a one loss, I think, one loss to Frankie Randall. So Oscar De La Hoya was still getting Chavez, while Chavez was still had name value right then and there. When Manny Pacquiao beat Oscar De La Hoya, Oscar De La Hoya was coming off of that big fight with Floyd Mayweather, you know, and coming off of a win as well, which allowed Manny Pacquiao to get that rub. But now, imagine if Oscar De La Hoya he loses to Floyd Mayweather, and then he's inactive for like 3 years, and then he comes back, and then he fights Manny Pacquiao when he comes back. Like, no one's gonna care. No one's gonna care. That's why these guys, when they were in their primes or whatever, they should have been fighting these young guys right then and there. Because if the young guys beat them when their name value was still up, then it would have mattered. And guess what? Then you make stars right then and there. But now we're here, and these so-called stars aren't really big time names. Jerome Boots Ennis. Imagine if Boots fought Earl Spencer Crawford. Crawford didn't want to do that. Come on, Crawford didn't want to do that. But imagine if these guys actually fought these young guys when it mattered. Imagine if Fundora would have been an actual name with like name value if you beat Keith Thurman back in like 2020, even 2021 or something. But now Fundora, like, did you see that this arena wasn't even filled like that much? Fundora, he's not a household name, and it sucks because Fundora does have some pretty good fights, and obviously, like, even though he's not a good talker, just because of his size and the look of him, he can draw a crowd like that. But unfortunately for him, guys like I said, guys like Keith Thurman, Spence and Charlo, and even Crawford to an extent, they were selfish. They didn't want to fight any of the younger guys. So whatever, it is what it is. As for the whole show I think was pretty bad. I didn't think this was a good show. The co-main, Yoenis Tellez, Brian Mendoza. That was probably the best fight of the card. It was a it was a pretty good fight. Tevez won by decision. I don't got more to say. I mean, it is what it is with that one. Um, then Yoleni Hernandez versus Terrell Gachet. I thought the stoppage was also really bad. I didn't like that stoppage at all. People are really high on Yoleni Hernandez, but look, he does look like the goods. I thought his style is really good. He's an exciting fighter. Just personally for me, it's very hard to go and hype up these Cuban fighters because these Cuban fighters always end up as hype jobs to me. If you're Cuban, I'm sorry if I offend you, but to me that's just how it is. You know, got guys like Guillermo Rigondeaux, Islani Lara, David Morrell, Tevez, like I mentioned before, like people, Luis Ortiz, people hype these guys up as like the boogeyman and all them type of stuff, and then they just end up like flopping. So like Yoleni Hernandez, he does look good. I like his style and such. Very good pressure fighter and such, but I don't know. For me, it's just hard to get into these Cuban fighters, man. I can't because, bro, especially Cuban fighters, people already as soon as they turn pro, people are already up their ass saying they're the best one in the division, blah 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 blah. But I mean, we'll wait and see. There was the heavyweight. It was like Gergen Hovhannissian fought some Mexican guy who started at welterweight. It looked kind of ridiculous, and that fight was pretty boring as well. The prelims was pretty meh. To be honest, I didn't watch the prelims. I watched the Elijah Garcia fight, which, man, that got turned into a bum, huh? Kind of sad to see, but whatever. Um, It really sucks that Richard Torres versus Frank Sanchez got canceled because this card could have needed this. This was not a pay-per-view card. This was just your typical championship fight on your subscription, your monthly subscription. This was not pay-per-view, but I'm guessing the PBC, they can't afford to run shows freely anymore. They got to put it on pay-per-view, even if it's a fight like Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman. They can't run these shows as a free to air subscription. They got to put it on pay-per-view. That's why Tim Zoo in his next fight in April, that will be on your monthly subscription. But guess what? PBC aren't financing that fight. It's the No Limit Australia. They're financing that fight. That's why that's free. But whatever. Yeah, this was a pretty bad show. I would say like a 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. Fundora, good performance. His best performance to date, I would say. Other than that, I got nothing else to say about this fight.